G'day Doggies fans, all things Bulldogs. It's the NRL Media Watch Ep3. And I thought I'd talk about my favourite subject, Fox Sports News with, or Fox Sports and Fox League, NRL360. And we're going to talk about, relate to last episode, which we discussed Latrell Mitchell. And basically, they took Gus Gould's comments on Latrell Mitchell and decided to attack Gus and attack Gus's job at the Dogs. When I'm happy for them to give criticism or have their opinion on his opinion and on his job, because it comes with the territory. I don't see the need for any person who works in the media that's linked to clubs and works for clubs as well to have that sort of cross-linked and cheap shots fired simply because they do their job and give their opinion. I think it's a poor way to go about their work. Just my opinion. And I think it's important when I speak on the Dogs in relation to the Bulldogs that one thing I say is that media has this habit and way of staying relevant, especially tabloid media, because when people aren't happy, when things aren't going well, they look for reasons, any reason to blame. And some of those reasons are completely justified, completely provable through evidence or proof. But a lot of the time, the media are able to provide an outlet for, whether it's fans in rugby league or if it's just people in general through politics or whatever it is, to come up with a solution that aligns with the way they feel. And the media will play to that, and then all of a sudden the media and what they say becomes true and accurate, when a lot of the time it's not. When people already know this. It's a little bit complex. But my point is, let's consider everything and not simply start buying into bullcrap because media can either show evidence or prove something. I'll tell you something now. They talk about their inside sources. The number one inside source for all these journalists, especially in News Corp, is the sentiment of the fans and the people on social media. Not through surveys, but through keywords that they comment on. And that's what feeds their stories and where their stories go, because they know that if they talk about these things or justify these feelings or thoughts that have been said, and they keep the story going, they enable the clicks for their advertisers, and that's what they sell to their advertisers, which I've talked about 100 times, and I'll continue to remind everyone that, you know, that's how they pay for the game. But I just think there's a much better way to go about it, and it needs to be called out. Now, the people they're also just doing their jobs, whether they're full of shit, whether they're lying, whether they're corrupt, whatever it is, or whether they appear corrupt, whatever it is, I have no doubt they love their family and their kids and that sort of stuff. You know, to me, there's good and evil in everyone and everything. Good and bad. There's no such thing as perfect. But it's quite clear to see how insensitive and how, you know, what I believe, they will not let anything stand in the way of a good story or a headline that supports the sentiments out there in the public. We found out, I think it was Friday night, that there was a tragic death for South Sydney. Kyle Turner, a a grand final hero, played on the bench. Now, I know Souths haven't been in form. And I know that, Latrell Mitchell played poorly on the weekend. No doubt. And look, there's been games where they could have isolated that many shots of him doing bad things in a game. Games they've won. There's the News Corp people especially, but all media, there's too many stars. Everyone's a star. They play one game, they're a star when they're discussed in the media or in the newspaper. The former star who's played one game. Some have never played a game. But there's only a few actual stars out there. There's some great team players, there's some great teams. Penrith are a star team full of very good players. And I don't know how many of those players in isolation go to another club and help it and become a marquee star at that other club. Maybe Nathan Cleary, maybe Dylan Edwards, maybe. We'll never know because they're so loyal. They're so loyal. I do believe, though, their front rowers would help most clubs a lot once they get their runs on the board. But the point I'm saying is we keep singling out players like Latrell Mitchell. Now, even Gus, he was asked a question which singled out Latrell. The question was, how do you think Souths are going now they've got Latrell back and he played well last week and yada yada? And Gus said, yeah, all the fanfare's great and he's signing signatures and that's all lovely and, it's all great, but he's still got to prove himself in crunch time as a fullback for South Sydney on the business end. And he said he hasn't done it yet. Now, that was enough, and that's what I spoke about in the last episode, for them to attack Phil Gould. A week that we actually beat the weekend before, we'd actually beaten the Dolphins. Not one mention of it. Yet they'd just for weeks been giving it to Canterbury. And then we lose to Newcastle, get flogged again, and then they give it to Canterbury again on the Monday. So reactive, but I can tell you a lot of these stories are written prior. They just wait for the result on whether they release them or not. Now, if Souths had won, if Souths had beaten Newcastle on the weekend and Latrell had those poor moments, they would not have shown them. They would have only shown what he did to influence the game. If he did the elbow at the end and the Souths had won, I can guarantee you they'd be blowing up about the elbow to the back of the head. They'd be saying it was nothing in it. Why is he being suspended? They'd be going off about it. And they'd go off about it for 3 days. Buzz would go off about it. Braith would go off about it. Gordy would go off about it. Brent Reid would go off. They'd all share in that one. They'd all, get around that and have a good time on that one. Then the next day, Crawley would come on with Hooper. And they'd all have their crack at the NRL for getting that wrong. But because what happened was expected to happen, they lost. And then Latrell was poor, no doubt. They've gone from promoting him as Super Saturday 2 weeks earlier, after one game back from injury. The promotion went for nearly, 3 minutes? And it said that Latrell Mitchell has never been fitter, never looked better, and never more ready. And the only reference to the Sharks, who they had to play, was that Latrell was playing the Sharks, which was at the end of the promotion. All that was in response to Phil Gould, because Phil said his opinion when asked a question. And they doubled down, they went back because they've obviously gone and asked Cartwright, what did you think about Gould saying the Broncos couldn't win the week before? And he started talking about 3 years, how they've turned it around in 3 years. Well, come on, mate. It might be good banner for to motivate your numbskulls up there, but at the end of the day, the team that finished last in 2020 was expected to compete for the competition and won its first 2 matches of the year before the COVID break, and then didn't come back and was not there, right? So let's not pretend that it's different. The misrepresentation of people and the misrepresentation of timelines is completely ridiculous. John Cartwright, who couldn't get it done at the Titans and got sacked. You know, a very good player and I reckon a good coach too. But come on, let's give it to Phil Gould, eh? Let's smash him. And then Carianis come on and did the same thing. And I talked about all that. The week later, after we lost to the Knights, Buzz Rothfield talked about the turnover at the club. Well, if you look for the last 6 years, he tried to blame that all on Phil Gould. Phil Gould probably is only accountable for 1 year of it. Because the first 6 months, he's sitting there not really making that many decisions. He's getting in there, understanding it all, trying to work out where they've got to go to fix it. The point of the matter is, and I started to touch on this, is that South's lost one of their grand final heroes in Kyle Turner at the young age of 31, had horrible injuries, could never fulfill his potential, and could have been a really great player. And they would have been hurting as a club. But what has NRL360 done? They've gone out there and absolutely had a crack at Latrell, which is fair enough. They could have done that on plenty of other games with plenty of other players. It's as if because South Sydney performed poorly against the Sharks and Latrell wasn't that good, and it's like they proved Phil Gould right. And then it's like they want to punish Latrell for that, it seems. But the thing I got a huge issue with was Braith coming out saying that there's rumours that there's stuff going on and they're not happy. It just wasn't on. It's just poor timing after what happened to a player in their club. To say there's rumours and there's tall poppy syndrome and there's favourites and all this sort of stuff. And it's not just there, it's gone on SEN and all these other places as well. SEN has a lot of Channel 9 people, has personalities from Foxtel, from everywhere. It's got all the footy heads in it, right? But the fact that they're talking about that is pretty disgraceful. Brent Reid was the only devil's advocate. Well, they're losing games, so all of a sudden all the things that are probably happening anyway seem a lot worse and come out in the public eye because people want answers. He tried to play devil's advocate and Braith just lost his shit and started carrying on. It's getting a bit old, actually. I was enjoying him taking on the journos. But now he's actually starting to go too far. He actually had sweat dripping off where his moustache would be. He was that venomous. He was rancid last night, Braith and Astor, on Monday night. They just could have kept it in their pants for a little bit longer. They could have easily done that story after the Roosters game, if they lost, or bring it before the Roosters game. Maybe would have steeled Souths a little bit. I know Braith, his uncle is George Piggins, and he's probably passionate about it, probably has a love for South Sydney as a Souths junior before going to the Dogs. But, you know, the whole fact of the matter is that they sat there and basically all sat together and said how great Latrell Mitchell was. Then did their Super Saturday all to have a crack at Gus Gould. And now they're basically, you know, it's as if it didn't happen. And the fact of the matter is that they've overhyped and super hyped him when they're the ones who overhype and super hype everyone and then try and tear him down when they fail or don't meet expectation. Latrell's had a history of having issues and having things that people have an issue with. Anyway, they can try and pull the blood over their eyes. So, they can try and pull the wool over their eyes. But I must say, these News Corp journalists don't care who they hurt, who they harm, as long as they cater to the fan sentiment. There's a lot of fans out there who dislike Latrell Mitchell. There's a lot of fans who dislike Phil Gould. And because of that, they get that data and know they're going to get a lot of clicks and advertisement. And they know how passionate the supporters of these teams are. The supporters of South Sydney are very, very passionate. The supporters of the Bulldogs are very, very passionate. And they want to sit there and create headlines which cater to how these people are feeling and bring instability into these organisations. And I think it's wrong. And look, I can't stand South Sydney for many reasons. You know, after marching with them to get them back in, there's some stuff that went down that I didn't like. And all the shit that's happened with Jared Sutton and all of that, I'll never forget. But the fact of the matter is, they've had a tough draw, when I take my bias hat off. Probably the toughest draw, and just as bad as injuries as what Canterbury have had. When you look at their forward pack and who's been in and out constantly. Plus Origin, and then playing teams like Canterbury who are struggling, and Dragons who are struggling, when they had all their Origin players out, meaning they lost points they probably would have got. Look, it doesn't detract for the fact they're out of form and they may not probably make the finals, which won't bother me at all. But I just think it's really poor timing to be sitting there dissecting. I don't really look, they want to sit there and call out criticism on Latrell Mitchell, fine. If they want to criticise Phil Gould, fine. If they want to criticise anyone, fine. It's the way they go about it and the way they do it. It's just ridiculous. It's as if they don't remember the stuff that they've said. Phil Gould got it right about Latrell and South Sydney at the moment. And it's like now they want, and Foxtel want to prove that they knew all along. Fox Sports want to prove that they were on this train all along. That's the problem. When the fact of the matter is, they all sat there in a circle. You know, you couldn't say a bad word about Latrell 2 weeks ago. Someone speaks the truth when they're asked a question. And all of a sudden, no. But with what happened with Kyle Turner, I think it's a completely bad taste to start rumours that there's all this infighting and shit going on at the moment. And part of me, you know, there's one team I can't stand more than Souths, and that's the Roosters. I've got Souths ahead of the Roosters. I've got them ahead of the Broncos somehow. And I hope Souths absolutely annihilate the Roosters in the last round, based on what the media have done. Anyway, that's my thoughts on it. One of their greats just died on Friday, and all they could do was try and tear their club down more and more. And the reason I say it is because they'll do it to other clubs. They do it to Canterbury. They do it to any club they can. And you know, these clubs need to block the media out, give them nothing, and go and do their talking on the field. All right, thanks for everyone who's subscribed, liked. It's going really good, and appreciate all the feedback, even if some of it's not to my liking. And give people having a crack at my head. It's getting to a new low. Anyway, guys, thanks for listening. I appreciate it. Take care. Bye.